A remote village in northern Nigeria, surrounded by hills and plains. But they face daily challenges from the harsh climate, occasional raids, and internal struggles within the community. Main characters: Yakubu, a young shepherd with a simple heart and unwavering faith. Pastor Musa, the wise, elderly spiritual leader of the village. Zainab, Yakubu's childhood friend, who is searching for her own path. Sani, a feared bandit leader from a neighboring tribe. The sun was setting over the rolling plains of the village, casting long shadows as Yakubu herded his sheep back home. His heart was heavy with worry. The bandits from the neighboring hills had raided the village the night before, stealing livestock and supplies. The village council had called for a meeting, and Pastor Musa was leading a prayer vigil. As Yakubu walked, Zainab approached him. Her eyes were bright with concern.
Yakubu, have you heard the news? The elders are planning to send a search party to confront the bandits.
Yes, but they haven't decided who will go.
It's dangerous. Sani and his men are ruthless.
Don't go, Yakubu. You have nothing to prove. Let others take the risk.
Zainab, if we all wait for others to act, who will protect our village? My faith tells me that sometimes God calls us into danger to show His power.
Faith is important, but so is survival.
Pastor Musa says we must trust in God's plan. Maybe this is mine. Later that night, in the village church, Pastor Musa stood before the gathered crowd. His voice echoed through the small, candle-lit room. My brothers and sisters, we are facing trials. The bandits have threatened our peace, but remember the words of Christ, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the children of God." We must act, but we must act with wisdom and prayer. Yakubu stepped forward. His voice was steady but low. Pastor, I believe God is calling me to lead the search party. I will go. The room fell silent. Even Zainab, standing in the back, gasped. Pastor Musa looked into Yakubu's eyes, searching for doubt but finding only resolve. Yakubu, the pastor said, this is no small task. The bandits are dangerous. Have you prayed on this? Yakubu nodded. Yes, Pastor. I have prayed, and I feel God's peace in my heart. If it is His will, He will protect us. And if not, then I will still follow His call. Pastor Musa smiled faintly. Then let us pray for you, son. May God give you strength and wisdom. The following morning, Yakubu and a small group of men set out toward the hills, where the bandits had last been seen. As they climbed the rocky paths, Yakubu felt the weight of leadership, but also a deep sense of purpose. His faith was strong, but the fear of the unknown pressed at the edges of his mind. When they reached the bandits' camp, the group was tense. Sani, the feared leader, stood tall, his eyes cold as stone. He sneered when he saw Yakubu approach. What do you want, shepherd boy? Sani spat. Come to beg for your sheep back. Yakubu stood firm. I come in peace, Sani. Our village has nothing but prayer to offer you. Return what you have taken, and no one needs to suffer. Sani laughed darkly. Prayer? Do you think your God will stop us from taking what we want? Yakubu's heart raced, but his faith held him steady. I believe in a God of justice and mercy. You don't need to live this way, Sani. you and your men could start a new path. You could find peace. For a moment, Sani's eyes flickered with something doubt, perhaps. But it was quickly replaced by anger. He drew his dagger, pointing it at Yakubyu. Peace is for the weak. Strength is all that matters here. Yakubyu raised his hands, showing no fear. True strength comes from love, not violence. I would rather die in peace than live by the sword. The bandits murmured among themselves, surprised by Yakubyu's courage. Sani stepped closer, his eyes narrowing. You think your faith can save you, boy? Yakubyu closed his eyes briefly, offering a silent prayer. When he opened them again, he saw not just Sani's rage but the burden of a man who had been lost for too long. I think God can save you, Sani, Yakubyu said softly. You don't have to live in darkness anymore. The tension in the air was thick. Sani's hand trembled as he held the dagger, but something in Yakubyu's words pierced through his hardened heart. Slowly, Sani lowered the weapon. You are either the bravest or the most foolish man I've ever met, Sani muttered, his voice wavering. Yakubyu smiled. I am neither. I'm just a man trying to follow God's will, redemption and peace. Sani took a step back, then signaled to his men. Release the livestock. Let them go. The bandits, confused but obedient, began freeing the sheep and cattle they had taken. The other villagers watched in awe as Sani, the ruthless leader, turned and walked away into the hills, leaving behind the life of violence he had known for so long. Yakubyu stood still, his heart racing. He could hardly believe what had just happened. As the villagers began to lead the animals back home, Zainab ran to him.
You did it, Yakubyu, she cried, her eyes shining with disbelief. You really did it.
Yakubyu shook his head. No, it wasn't me. It was God. I just followed his voice. A new beginning. Back in the village, Pastor Musa welcomed Yakubyu and the others with open arms. The church was filled with songs of praise that evening, as the villagers celebrated not only the return of their livestock but the miracle they had witnessed. As the night wore on, Yakubyu sat quietly under a baobab tree, looking up at the stars. Zainab joined him, her voice soft.
I didn't believe you could do it. I thought you were walking into certain death.
Yakubyu smiled. I wasn't sure either. But sometimes, when God calls us, we have to trust Him, even when we can't see the way. Zainab nodded, her heart touched by the quiet strength of her friend.
You're right, Yakubyu. Maybe faith is stronger than fear after all.
As the village slept peacefully for the first time in weeks, Yakubyu knew one thing for certain: faith, when acted upon, could change even the hardest hearts and bring light to the darkest places.